Hello, Sami.
Hi, Skari.
It's that time of the year again.
Best time of the year, 2 times in a year.
Yes, exactly. And we have come to the 9th Global IT Experience Benchmark Report. So, and this time actually, when we look at it, we'll be zooming out a little bit.
Yeah.
We have over 1.6 million responses for the full year of 2022. And one of the things that we will do is that we will look a little bit more at the maturity as well of our clients and looking at how IT can make the biggest impact for the business as a whole.
Yeah. And I think we are looking at the overall IT a bit more than in the previous reports. Mm-hmm. But as you said, also the survey we did for the existing customer base, how they really work in the ITXM area.
Yeah. And that was a survey we did 2 years ago. So it will be interesting to see some of the differences.
Yeah.
How has the maturity changed in the last 2 years?
Or has it?
Yes, exactly. All right, let's get on with it. So just a quick reminder about the benchmark data itself. So where does it come from? It comes from our customers. It is anonymized data from the HappySignals customers, over 130 different countries, enterprises with more than 1,000 employees, and most of them have tens of thousands and some even hundreds of thousands of employees. And these responses that we're presenting reflect real end user responses in situations with IT experience over the year 22.
And I now, if you are listening to this as non-HappySignals customer, remember that these numbers are from organizations that are focused on experience management already. Mm. So some of the experience numbers might be a bit higher than would be from average company of the world.
Yeah, that's a good point. And when we look at the numbers from this year, this is an interesting picture. And what we see is that services, collaboration with IT, and remote work are the ones that are the highest scoring ones. And the two of them, services and collaboration with IT, is something we have seen every single benchmark report.
Yep.
Human interaction is something that makes end users very happy. And I think remote work is one where we've seen progressive increase every single time. And now it has become commonplace, and IT knows how to manage that in a way that makes end users happy as well.
Yeah, and I think this is the first time we are releasing that overall IT experience score on its own. So 35 is the average happiness in this kind of organization when we are asking them to rate the overall IT, how they are thinking on what they're thinking about it. So that is kind of an average when it comes to these different measurement areas, which might be quite expected that it should be somewhere between the highest scoring and the lowest scoring ones.
Yeah, and this is something that many companies that have been doing annual surveys about IT, for example, in an HR context or in just a different type of one survey per year with many different answers. This is our equivalent. And it's interesting to see also, is this the reputation of IT in the company?
Yeah, I would say this is the reputation of IT. So if you have only one number to rate, and then you ask about your internal IT, how that supports you in your work and how you feel about that, it really is how you feel about that organization, those services in overall. So really, really important one when it comes to how IT is collaborating with the business.
Mm. And the way that we do the survey is that we ask first how happy they are with the IT in an overall sense. And then we have our factors that then show why they think that way.
Yeah, and I think this one has been really, really interesting. And there is a lot of data on this slide. But I think we can go through a couple of the findings here. Some of them really surprising, to be honest, when we started to do this survey about a year ago, a bit more. But if you look at this and look at the people who rate the services very positively, so 9 and 10, which is on the right side in this slide, or if you look at the negative side on the left side, they both are having IT support in the top. Even in the neutral ones, where we're asking that if you scored 7 or 8, you asked, what could IT do better? Again, IT support being the first one. So to me, this means that the IT support is the biggest influencer to the overall IT reputation. And this is interesting. If you think about really the IT budget, it is not aligned at all with this one. You are spending maybe 2-3% of your total IT budget to support.
Yeah.
And this is still having so huge influence on the reputation, on how people feel about the IT. But the people side of things have so big influence on the experience of people that even though you are maybe scoring, and as you saw from the last slide, you're scoring like devices and laptops and mobile phones very, very low, they still don't matter so much. But for me also was really surprising that the second most important thing for IT reputation is devices.
Yeah.
I would have for sure said that applications would be the most important one in all of this, even more important than support service. But no, it is the third most important thing. Even though those are the things at work we use continuously, the application that the organization is providing to us. But still support services and devices are more important when it comes to IT reputation.
Yeah.
So that is kind of a really interesting finding in here. Of course, in some organizations, there are applications that really are bothering people, causing that lost time and so on. But in overall, applications are not so important here.
Yeah. And there was an interesting finding here as well when looking at this is IT security. For example, as a little outlier, that it's the least impactful one when people give a negative score, but it's quite high up with 18% saying that they're happy, and IT security contributes to that.
Yeah, and that's against my beliefs. Really, like you score a select 9 and 10, and then the reason is because of good security. But maybe that is something related that there is so much IT risk and security risk nowadays that if you as an employee feels secure, it influences your experience with the whole IT. So it doesn't bother you if there is IT security stuff going on, but it's when it's done well, you score well in that area. So I do agree that it's an interesting one. Also, what we can see here is that IT person's attitude, 19% is in the negative part, but 53% is in the positive. So
absolutely.
Again, back like we have said in all those 8 previous benchmark reports, in Service Desk, the attitude of end users has a good influence in the positive area, not so big in the negative area. But here, IT person's attitude in here is 19%. When it's in support service, it's like 7%. So it's much bigger here. So for some reason, people feel overall IT people, they do get a bit more negative feedback than people working in Service Desk.
Yeah.
If you directly look at these numbers here. But it has been really interesting to see. But of course, the main thing for individual customers is to compare their own results to this one. But in overall, if you think about IT reputation, focus on Service Desk, then the devices that you're providing to end users, then applications, and of course the attitude of employees as well is really important.
Yeah. And looking at lost time then with overall IT. So when we think about the digital workplace and how many of the office workers and today are using digital services and digital tools for every single thing part of their work.
Yeah.
So how much time do they lose in a month? And we see that people estimate to lose around 4 hours and 23 minutes.
Yeah.
And what's the cost of that for the enterprise when we think about it?
Yeah. So in this calculation, we have used 50 pounds per employee, but you can replace that with euros if you are located in that, or dollars if you are located in some other countries. So 226 euros is the cost of that, what we lose in IT. But now we have to remember, this is now just one average number from all our customers. It very heavily depends on the industry and so on. So don't take this as a given in a way that this would be true in your organization, but it gives you some kind of understanding that is up at the level what people are thinking that IT is making them lose. So tickets and other inefficiencies that is happening there. But I think this is not so bad as I expected it to be when we started to do this one. But it's anyway, of course, a thing that you can optimize and you can start to realize and understand where they are losing that 4.5 hours.
Yeah. And then going into this is the overall, but then when you go into the specific measurement areas and you start understanding, then you can find the real pain points that cause lost time. And we will get back to that a little bit later.
True.
Maybe we jump over to country differences or regional differences now.
Yeah.
And this time around, what we did is that we separated the incidents from the requests. And we see some interesting data here. When it comes to the incidents, we see that just like before in the previous reports, Western Europe is the hardest to please. And they are still the ones that lose the least time as well. And this is something we've discussed in to lengths before.
Yeah.
And anything you want to say here about the incidents and the regional differences?
I think this has been quite stable. So it's interesting to see that if you compare like the US to Western Europe, in US 79 is the average, in Western Europe 72. Those are quite near to each other. But the lost time in Europe is 2 hours 41 minutes, and still we are the least happiest. And in US the lost time is 3 hours 40 minutes, and still you guys in US are much more happier than people in Western Europe. But on the other hand, you are the second most critical ones when it comes to the global different regions. But I wanted to kind of point out that North America, because I know what happens when you change to the request slide.
So let's go to the requests, and what do we see here? This was a surprise to us.
Yeah, there is, and still need to have a lot of discussions to really deep dive into this one. So for request, North America is the least satisfied. And now if you compare here the Western Europe to North America, Europe is scoring much higher, losing much less time. But I was thinking that is this related to expectation?
Yeah.
So when you are ordering something, are the expectation in US so much tighter than that's causing this issue here?
Yeah.
That you kind of it matters to you more than it matters in the expectation level, maybe here less. But because I don't believe that delivery and doing request would be so much slower in US than it is here in Western Europe. Yeah. But it's still something that was surprised that there is so huge difference between incidents and requests when it comes to happiness and lost time.
Yeah. And one interesting part that when looking at the request, is that the differences in IT happiness between the different regions are smaller than in incidents.
True.
But then when you look at the lost time between the different regions, the spread is much higher. Yeah. So we look at, for example, let's say Africa, 8 hours and 16 minutes on average, compared to Western Europe with 1 hour and 47 minutes. So more than a four time difference there. So something to look into more and understand what this is, what causes these differences.
Yeah, that is true. But I think for Africa, I would maybe say that most of our customers the headquarters are located in Western Europe and North America, some of them now in Australia, but none of them really have headquarters in Africa. So when you are working in a global enterprise in Africa as a salesperson or production person, whatever, you know that you're not in the headquarters. Maybe again, your expectations in a request is that you do get devices, for example, or new mouse or whatever that is much slower. Maybe even goes to other requests as well, which are not material things that are like passports or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or use rights.
But we will look into this more and get back to this as well in future reports.
I'm more than happy to get any comments in LinkedIn or anywhere else about if somebody can explain this better than we can, because it's a cultural different thing that everybody has an opinion for sure.
Yeah. And then now we can get into maybe the most interesting part of the research this time, which is about the ITXM maturity, the ways of working of our customers and what they do differently from 2 years ago.
True.
So the first one here is about your self-assessed maturity. So we asked the customers, how is your organization managing IT experience? With 1 being, we haven't even started. And with 5, perfectly organized and executed. So what do we see here in the results? We have a 57% say that they're right there in the middle ground, giving a score of 3 to the organization.
Yeah, I think that was, now when thinking about this, when already having the result, I think this is quite expected. It is something that when you start to do experiment, it's a journey. You take steps towards, you start from measure, share, identify, and so on. So, and we are communicating quite a lot for customers. These are the steps you take to get to the kind of cultural level. So I think it is that most know that they are doing experience management still in maybe one tower of IT, and they know that that has to be spread to other towers before they really can say that they are experience maturity is high and they are really doing experience management for whole IT. But quite happy with these results. It's people are doing quite a lot already, but still willing to develop. Or let's see the other slides if there's any need for development in there.
Absolutely. And I think that when it comes to experience management, because it often challenges the organization's existing ways of working, then it has to be a clear signal from the leadership that this is now important for us, for it to really take root. And what we see here is an interesting difference between outsourced and insourced first-line service desk, and how the perception of how important is this to my IT leadership, what the differences are. And what do you want to say about this one here?
I think this was something that was really surprising for me when we did this first time 2 years ago. My expectation was that people are keeping service desk internal because they want to prioritize experience of end users and not willing to use any partners in there. But it wasn't true. And still the same thing happened this year. So people are doing outsourcing and setting the first target to be experience. Is it because they do the outsourcing based on cost savings, but they want to mitigate that risk by setting experience as the main target? Might be part of this case. But it also shows in this result, as it did 2 years ago. And when you have outsourced service desk, you really change the ways of working. And outsourced service desks do have a process of getting better in experience management or helping customers to get better in here. So it's a interesting one, I would say, but really experience is the most important or the second most important target for all of these customers. But of course, now we are talking about our customer base, so we have to be honest that this is those customers who have already started this journey.
Yeah, they have made an investment to being experience-centric, so it would be strange not to see this as an important thing in the priorities of the leadership as well.
Exactly.
And looking at then about experience, who has targets? And I think this is quite expected, the results, that the most common part of IT that has experience targets is service desk teams, followed by service desk agents. Anything else here, or is this quite self-explanatory?
I would say this is quite self-explanatory, and I think this is also what we kind of underline can see that this is a growing one. The longer you have been doing experience management, the more teams you are adding here. It starts from very practical things in the service desk. And we have always known and talked about it a lot that service desk is the most mature when it comes to experience management because service desk is so near to end users anyway. And naturally is talking with end users. So much easier to focus on end users and the customers in that sense than for some other IT organizations that might be quite far from the end users, and it needs time to people to adjust. So not surprised at all with these results, but happy that there is so many kind of a target set in the service desk area.
It's interesting. There was Doug Tedder on LinkedIn was shared an article that they had posted for HDI, and he was just talking about the gold mine of experience data or experience understanding that the service desk has, but maybe not always knows how to utilize. And I think that's where also the way that we capture the data by asking how happy they were after each interaction with the service desk helps them quantify that and then be able to set targets that are the same over different parts of the IT.
Yeah, makes sense.
And managing experience. So then one thing that has been spoken about a lot in different terms, depending on which part of IT experience you're looking at. But we call it the experience management office, the same way as Brighthorse and XLA Collab and others speak. And do our customers have experience management offices? And the big majority says no. Not yet. And I think this so also is
still there is more people saying that they don't even know what the term means than really are doing it. But quite a lot of companies are having, like here you can see that about 29% is us saying that they are planning to have XMO. And I think this is also part of what really is an XMO. So do you really have to have several people? Is it just a small group of, is it really people that are 100% focused on this one, or is it just one role of theirs? And I think those discussions are still ongoing. And in this survey, we didn't explain what we mean by XMO. But it's people are moving this direction. Of course, this question we didn't have 2 years ago because the whole term has came up with after that. So
exactly. And as we've seen here, for example, Forrester, when they speak about the digital experience, a couple of years ago, they said you should have a person for it. Now they're saying you should have a team for it. So now we have this, is it a full-time team? Is it a part-time team? Is it a virtual role? Is it a official role? And there are many different ways to go here. And I think these organizations are also weighing the different options. What are the trade-offs? What is the good option for us?
And I think our recommendation depends on if you are 1,000 end-user company or 100,000 end-user company. It's not the same.
Yeah, exactly. And experience management is also about KPIs in general. And this, I was hoping to see a little bit different results, because we saw from the last one that when IT sets KPIs together with business, the outcomes are better because they agree on what is important for the business and how can IT contribute. But still, 71% of the KPIs are created by IT.
Yeah, and it's and then even that next 14% it is prepared by IT, then approved by business, and only 14% is created with business, and then 0% is in the other way around, that business would be providing the targets for IT. But maybe that is kind of would be too dreamland. We would be in that situation. So, but I quite, very, very IT oriented still.
Yeah,
not even doing that with business, which is a bit worrying thing.
But I think it might change, especially with the experience management office. If it contains parts of the business as stakeholders, it will be natural also to have the conversation about how future KPIs are being set.
Yeah, and maybe we can come back when we are talking about the benefits of experience management in that.
Exactly. And one thing then when it comes to KPIs is that IT is quite used to working with sanctions or rewards or a mix of both. And this was a little bit surprising to me that in the last 2 years, we see that especially sanctions are maybe falling off. So a little bit, the neither part at the top of this list has grown a lot. What does this
So kind of you don't anymore have in your agreement with your provider those KPIs set with sanctions. So you really can then focus on, I think we have been talking a lot that some of the SLAs, the traditional SLAs are pushing people to work in a not experience-oriented way. And maybe some of our customers have been now listening to us and doing the agreements in a new way with their partners. So having neither sanctions or rewards in the agreement, 38%, that is quite a big number compared to kind of a 9% earlier. And as you said, sanctions also going down. So 57% is having only sanctions. And that is also dropped to with more than 30%.
Yeah.
So big change.
And maybe that's also the business building or IT building a relationship with the business. I mean, sanctions are not part of a sort of human relationship. It's something that is agreement and very industrial and very
there is no trust when you have sanctions and but also you have to have trust before you can live without that kind of sanctions. And I think that is maybe something that we do see this happening mainly with customers who have been doing experience management for some time.
Yeah,
it's not typically the first thing you do. It is something that you drop out later on. But of course, there are exceptions on that one.
Yeah, and interesting to see how this develops.
Yeah, it is.
So let's go a little bit and look at sharing the data then to create awareness around experience management and how do our customers share data?
Yeah, I think this was not really a surprise how this is going here, but mainly these reports from the IT experience to the rest of the organization, IT and business, and only a little less than half having a regular IT experience review meeting inside IT. Maybe that question also kind of meant that it really is separately for this one. We know that some customers are having meetings around this, but part of other meetings.
Yeah.
So, but regularly, half of the people are analyzing it together. Yeah. And of course, that is something we really recommend to do as a team, not only individuals doing that. But then some and many companies are exporting this data that we collect from the end users to other tools and analyzing maybe this correlated to more data that they have from Nextings and One Eyes and Excise and so on. So kind of combine that data. So that is quite often that happens as well.
Yeah. And which is a good thing. I mean, it's one of those questions that comes back all the time. Like, how can we understand whether or not the data that we get from HappySignals could be combined with the data that we get from telemetry tools that understand what's happened technically inside the applications and laptops to see where are correlations. So in that way, it's very encouraging to see almost 40% saying that they do expect.
And I think, but I would maybe say that most of this anyway here is to make sure that this data is part of the other reporting they are doing. So many people are having a happiness score or something as part of their monthly or quarterly IT reporting.
Yeah.
So that it's not a separate report they are sending about this, but part of it and combining and doing that.
Yeah, which is a positive.
Yeah.
Very positive.
It's like understanding, sharing experience data is always positive.
Yeah.
It's nothing negative. And we are thinking that you shouldn't be doing everything in our product.
Yeah.
There are some things that you should do here and you understand the data and we help you to understand the data. But combining that to other platforms, you might need to do the exports and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking at then recognizing development areas from that data, whether it's in different reviews, whether it's in other platforms, wherever it is. And this is something that we know is sometimes challenging to have really a regular model or process of looking at this. And 21% say that they do have a clearly defined one.
Yeah.
But there is many more that say that it's not as regular or systematic.
Yeah. And I think this is related, of course, kind of to having the KPIs with teams and so on. So if you set those, so kind of typically it goes that you first start to do the first decisions based on the data, and then you start to have some benefits about it. Then after that, you start to set those targets.
Yeah.
So I believe this will be moving more to the having a standard way of doing it.
Yeah.
But really happy that that means that 89% of people are really using the data for IT decision making, which is a good result.
Absolutely.
And something that we feel is what we feel we are delivering to the whole economy is IT decision making tool.
Yeah.
So this is for us very important numbers here.
Yeah. And so once you identify something, then the next question is, what do you do about it? And we know that IT is fixing things based on the data. But then you said, we did. How do you communicate back to show the end users and show the business that their feedback matters? And this is about sharing the data and communicating it back.
Yeah. And most companies doing this sometimes, but not systematically. 18% is only doing it systematically and in the continuous manner. And 11% is never or rarely. So happy to see that at least sometimes people are doing it. And it is something that you shouldn't be pushing it, celebrating the success and so on that should be done. So, but hopefully that 18% will be growing in the future.
Yeah.
Because we know that if you do this well, it will also continue to motivate the people to give you feedback and you get more response rates and so on. So you get the whole thing growing.
Yeah.
You get more data, you understand better, you make better decisions and that loop continues. So we really recommend to do this stuff, but it's not something that people have yet productized in a way that everybody would be having one model.
Yeah. Maybe one thing here is that you communicate the good stuff, but the experience management is not always so linear. You can sometimes you try something and it doesn't work and you have to try again. So maybe you don't communicate about those failures. So
it's harder to communicate the failures, but on some level, I would say you should be doing that as well in a way that, hey, we learned again, and this is what we are now going to do.
Yeah.
So it's openness, transparency, and so on.
Absolutely. And the context then. So in which contexts do you use IT experience data when making decisions? And we see that the service desk improvement initiatives is by far the largest ones.
Yeah.
And logical with when we saw where the targets are, where the systematic use is. Anything else you want to say here?
Yeah, I think that this was quite expected to be honest, and I would say the budget decision, as we have the maturity pyramid, it's only in the 7% it's in here, but it really takes time for people to do experience management so that they start to trust the data and start to really kind of do those big decisions on, hey, here is the thing where we should be focusing on. Yeah. We should be investing to better experience in Service Desk or better tools in here or better laptops or whatever that is. So it takes time that we are there, but people are doing decisions based on the data, but not yet on the budget level mainly.
Yeah. But still, we see also that the managing change of partners or tools. So when it comes to something that is so experience-centric as the Service Desk, there it is easier to use the data because it really is about how do the people from the outsourced partner provide services to our end users in that interface. Yeah. So the weight of experience data maybe in that type of interactions is higher than when it comes to the applications or device decisions that need more data from other sources as well.
Yeah.
And looking then at the benefits, and this is something that I think every single organization that goes into IT experience management is thinking about. How do we prove the value of ITXM to the business, and what are the benefits that the customers are getting from this? So here we see what are the benefits. And happier end users, unsurprisingly, number one.
Yeah. But I think the next ones, it's they are really high as well. And in a way, kind of the earlier slides, we had quite low numbers in doing the budget decisions and so on. But 65% is, I think, they have better focus on IT. They have better data on making IT decisions and more motivated IT employees. That fourth one there really is a minimum fund for me as a founder, because that is really the reason why the whole company exists. Is helping IT to show the value what we are doing, and then feel better because I'm creating something valuable. I'm not just closing tickets or doing something, making service up and running. I know why and how I'm helping people. And that is the thing that is really great to see on this list, so high there. And I think the next one, their ability to show clear value of IT to business really is high as well. And that is related to that motivation part. At least I believe so.
And it's interesting, like the more smiles, less time wasted. We know that it's often we focus on the end user so that they would be having more smiles and less time wasted with IT, but it also is applicable to the IT teams themselves. They feel like what they do is focused on the right things and they can see the result.
Yeah, and I think that in overall, really happy with this in a way that, of course, this is in a way feedback for our product as well. But if you're not a customer, you can look at this from the perspective that, hey, there are quite big things that people are now saying that when they have been doing experience management, it means something. You create value, but it also means internal to IT quite a lot. So yes, you make employees just more happy and you make them more productive, but the internal feeling in IT is positive. It influences how we work in IT, and that is a big thing.
And especially if we look at the better collaboration with partners is also an important one. The people who responded to this survey, 60% had outsourced service desks. Here we see that 55% say that one of the outcomes is a better collaboration. And I think that's a really big pain point in many organizations. How do we improve the relationship with our service provider so that they would understand the value of the service that they provide, and we could find that common focus through experience data?
Yeah, so kind of that better collaboration with partners there. As you said, 60% is having an outsourced services provider. So kind of that is almost every one of them. But of course, it's partners. It doesn't say the outsourced partners. So there are internal service, kind of internal companies as well, or companies having internal services as well.
But interesting to get back to this as well and see how the numbers change as the world of experience management changes and evolves.
Yeah.
Some of the things that change less are incidents, requests, and the factors that make people happy. So when we look at the factors for IT incidents, you can go to the website to see more of the results. These change very little. It's they remain 3 rules of thumb. That speed of service is universally impactful. It will make happy people and it will make people unhappy as well. Negative feedback, often about the process. Keep your end users informed about what you're doing with their tickets and where the progress is going. And the third one is that agents and that relationship, positive feedback often contains aspect of the people, agent attitude, agent skills, that interaction.
That is true, and I think there is very, very few changes in what is important here. But go and check the report if you want to have more details on this one and see the same ones for request as well.
Yeah. And maybe the last thing that we could look at, or the second to last thing, is this finding from the last report. And we found that 80% of the lost time with IT incidents comes from only 13% of the tickets. And this has been a big topic of discussion in the last 6 months.
It has been with the customers and prospects and influencers and so on, because I think this was seen as a quite an interesting finding from the whole kind of service desk ecosystem, or experience ecosystem, or whatever term you want to use. But maybe, Sakari, you can explain the kind of because the question that we have gotten is that, okay, now I got it, but how I use this data? So if we give a kind of very, very simple instructions on how to use that kind of data if you have it.
Yeah. So the way that we look at it, and it's a recommendation, sort of a good place to start from, is, for example, what can we automate in IT? And I think automation candidates can be found quite easily from those 69% of tickets that only lead to 6% of lost time. They're often password resets. They're easy things that you just need to check the boxes. And then if you can automate that, then the agents themselves, they can focus on those 13% of tickets that are difficult to solve. Then they can go into looking for the problem and solve it once and for all, rather than having to do a not so good job and hope that the problem goes away. So really giving them time to focus on those difficult tickets.
Yeah, and I think as maybe we didn't this time explain this really the finding from last time, because it's too obvious to us ourselves nowadays, but those 13% tickets cause 80% of the lost time.
Yes, 80.
80. And it's a huge amount from small amount of tickets.
Yeah.
And if we only focus on kind of average numbers in IT and try to kind of focus on even the happiness score, if we only look at the high numbers, like where we are there, and are we 85 and whatever, we might forget this one.
Yeah.
But this is causing those stories from business that how bad IT was.
Yeah.
So you really have to understand what are these tickets, because these are the most meaningful funds for the business. And yes, they might be multi-vendor tickets and the most complicated. So you have to do the other stuff efficiently so that you can focus on having enough energy on these ones, or enough people in solving these ones, because this really is making IT look bad if you don't solve these.
Yeah.
And that is something that is by automating stuff, what you really should be doing there is getting people free to solve these more complicated tickets.
Yeah.
Or even try to figure out how you can have more resources on this complicated tickets area.
Yeah. And we know that when it comes to the tickets themselves, also which part of the ticket resolution process is done or forced to be done by the end users themselves. And if you look at channels that are being used in incidents, so now for the first time, portal as a whole is bigger than email and phone combined. But then we see the lost time, 4 hours and 19 minutes lost time compared to 2 hours and 26 on the phone. So we see this push towards portal, but remember.
Yeah. Is that portal is again, it's the lowest number here in happiness and the biggest lost time. But on the other hand, if you look at the kind of the overall measurement areas, the portals are now having much higher scores than they used to have.
Yeah.
So portals are getting better because people and companies are focused on making them better and talking right language. And now remember, this is now IT incidents again. If you would look at the same slide and look at from the report, if this would be requests, even much higher percentage in portal, but also much happier end users in portal.
Yeah.
So it is IT incidents, IT problems that people are not having good experience in when it comes to portals.
And the good thing is that just came to mind now is that we did see the data earlier that 43% of the companies are using experience data to improve their knowledge base. So it is, while they're pushing them towards portal, they also are using the experience data to better understand how they can make the knowledge base and that self-service experience better. So it's on the right track.
Yeah, and it has been going to better direction all the time. So it's a good thing.
But I think that sums it up for this time. And we will put much more data in the report itself on the website. And so feel free to go there. And as always, reach out to us if you want to discuss these results more in detail.
Yeah, and I can say that this guy here can come to any event to speak about these numbers and have a discussion internally with your IT team about it to make kind of more awareness in this area. Of course, I can do that as well, but I know you love it, maybe even more than I do. So.
But no matter how much we love it, maybe we'll give some time back to the end users and finish this off now. So thank you very much for joining us today, and we hope you enjoyed the report, reading it, and see you next time.
Bye.